Dawn of the final day. Evening of the final day. Um, yeah. So I got this comment yesterday. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I can do about this one. I think that the audio levels are fine, but I don't know. Maybe this is quiet. It's just necessary to include here. But today, this ethos has been institutionalized into a global infrastructure designed to help us detect. Maybe that is just quiet. Maybe I need to be real close to this mic just to be loud enough. But we'll see. We'll see. It seems like my audio is coming through louder than the video is right now. So and statistics. Even now, it seems a little higher. All right. Gave us a formal language for man. Let's continue then. So I'm at the stage where I'm just starting to chisel away at small things that ChatGPT puts my attention on. I say, here's my rough draft for a video essay on truth. I have been workshopping this for a bit, and I think we're close, but I want to make sure that it's film ready. To be clear, I am not looking to make large, sweeping changes. I want to know which specific instances of the essay you think are currently weakest. This can be a measure of how effective you think the argument is, whether you think the argument could be further steelmanned, whether you think certain phrasing might not be effective, whether certain writing is stylistically poor or redundant, and perhaps any other suggestions for improvement that we could make. So I haven't done any of the fun prompts yet where I ask it to glaze me. This is the ones where we're trying to prompt it to come up with something critical. I'm looking for exact examples. Let's cap it at the 5 most important things you think deserve my attention. All right. And we could just keep going through that. I did want to actually follow up on the thing we said yesterday. We must understand. Do I have one of these? No, we don't. Not in the video essay, at least. I know where to look, though. That's going to be in the conclusion. All right, I'm not sure. I've cut down a little bit too. We're almost at 16. Oh man, can we get to 16 through this? Crazy. We were at like 20. All right. Truth in each moment is rather suggestive, tentative, and fleeting. It's our experience of truth, right? So this is going to be something to make it more clear as to what we mean by this. This is probably the weakest early phrasing because it risks making truth sound like a passive feeling. Your argument is more subtle, not that truth is fleeting, but that our experienced grip on what is true is continuously generated and revised. So our moment-to-moment sense of what is true is provisional. But we say provisional up here. Stable enough to guide. Okay, but we don't want to say that. Right, we would want to do for number 1. Let's just try to think this out ourselves. Let's challenge ourselves here. I do like our moment-to-moment sense of what is true. Is yeah, fleeting is tough because it makes it sound like we're always losing something, losing our grasp, which I mean is a fair way to describe our relationship to our own understanding and our relationship to our understanding of sensory stimuli, at least at a lower level. Tentative is nice here. Is tentative. Tentative and okay, what are we getting? No tentative here. Tentative and what is it? Self-fulfilling. Yeah, what about that? Tentative and self-fulfilling. Keeping with the idea. Through this lens, our moment-to-moment sense of what is true is tentative and self-fulfilling. Keeping with the idea of active inference, the brain continuously acts in ways that help realize its expected regulatory states. Given the volatility of sensory stimuli and the organism's changing needs, this process persists without a final conclusion for as long as we live. So we want to capture the continuous aspect here. But we have continuously here. But what would be an adjective? All right, for number one, I'm thinking this, but oh, I can't add I can't speak into this. But I'm thinking of adding another adjective that captures the continuous, never-ending aspect of this system. Okay, we can do that. We could do that. Let's get that done before we move on, because then we have to start jumping around. I'd avoid self-fulfilling here. It's close, but it may imply that the sense of truth makes itself true, which sounds too constructivist, right? It's self-fulfilling under the hood in a sense. So ongoing, tentative, ongoing, and it's really, I mean, we want to get past the regulating. It's not just the regulating, it's predictive. Now, I wonder if we can get this more close, where it's the brain continuously acts in ways that help realize its expected regulatory states. The thing to add there is that it's like the brain is constantly doing what it thinks will help realize those states. So that's where the predictive aspect would be. Self-stabilizing is pretty good, though, because that's really what self-evidencing is kind of. Could we not just do self-evidencing? Though self-evidencing is another idea that is much broader than what we're trying to get at. So let's try that. Let's go with that. Iterative. Ooh. All right, number two. What do we have for number two? The chair section is doing good work, but it overstays slightly. They learn to call this object a chair to duck. Okay, this sentence broadens nicely, but it also makes the chair example sprawl. You already have several paragraphs on chairs, then return to chairs again in the reasoning section. The repetition may feel pedagogically clear on paper, but in video form, it may start to drag. I trim or sharpen one of the chair passes. For example, this later sentence, the reasons that justify calling something a chair tend to correspond to learned features. So that is something that we could actually make more abstract, I think. The reasons that justify calling something. That justify. It's like that justifies something's definition almost. The reasons we could give for calling something a chair usually draw from the same. Okay, that's not what we're trying to jump to. That justify calling something a chair tend to correspond. Okay, for example. And then how much are we doing with chair after this? Chair. Because this is a chair. Now we gotta keep this. I like this extra thing. This extra guy. I think it's important. So I'm going to skip. Semantics is never purely descriptive, but fundamentally grounded in normativity. Bum, bum, bum. That was in our conditioning section. This is a major claim, and I think it needs either a softer phrasing or one more clarifying clause. As written, it may trigger resistance from people who think you are smuggling in a strong philosophical thesis about all meaning. All right, let's not try to just add in some AI language here. Okay. I gotta figure out where I need to be. I might need to be down small here. Woo! What was I down small for last time? Was that also I'm not sure. Our use of words is also shaped by normativity. It's not just our use of words. It's all the meaning involved and whatever we mean by that. So it's how we perceive. So it's how we internalize and habitualize our understanding of something. So the pen, of course, is a great example because we don't think about the pen at all when we use it, but it seems like we understand what a pen is by the way we act. And that's where we would say that that type of action would have at least started from some sort of normative learning about how we ought to use a pen. And then, of course, it works, and now we can justify it to our own selves, and it's now almost normative within our own mind towards ourselves, which is the more deep philosophical argument to make besides the mere conditioning through other people argument that I'm pointing out here. Do you know how to engage in linear regression analysis? Ooh, not anymore. No. I do not. Is this going to be day 3 of quizzing me on math? All right, this keeps your point but reduces the grand declaration feel. It also helps steelman. Okay, we're going to actually skip that one. The science section is strong, but the line about consensus is underdeveloped. Within scientific contexts, consensus is not the default. This sentence is potentially within certain contexts, within certain scientific. Yeah, this is good. We're at like real small fries now. And this would be within scientific. Or is this going to be up here? Yep. Consensus has to be earned rather than assumed. Okay, within many contexts, within certain scientific fields, consensus is not the default. Studies can conflict. Measurements can be noisy. Conclusions can overstep. Experts can disagree is already handled. Oh yeah, there's a few lists probably that I have to still get rid of. Institutions can fail. I want to be let's get rid of this one. Within certain scientific fields, consensus is not the default. Studies can conflict. Measurements can be noisy. Conclusions can overstep. And when we move from the physical sciences into the complexity of social, so yeah, we want to get back there. Yeah, we got to remove some of these lists if we find them. Ooh, that should be in the document if you're going to recommend people engage in statistical inference. Yeah, I guess, yeah, I mean, we'll look into this. I'll figure out what is necessary within that space. I mean, if you have a suggestion about how we can make that type of thing salient for an individual who can leverage that within their own life without a bunch of data, right? Like this isn't, we're not playing with Python here. We're not getting out a pen. We need clear heuristics in a 100 IQ person that they can just leverage. Also, if you want to know how to manage noise in studies, you should learn Shannon entropy. Yeah, we don't need to know that. We do not need to know that. We just need to know that there's noise in studies and that, that there's mechanisms that can deal with that noise. All right, the conclusion is several excellent lines, but it repeats the same final insight too many times. These three passages are all good, but they overlap. Our discussion provides a way to address the problem of truth, not by giving us one final universal definition, but by explaining why we feel the need for one in the first place. And then instead we have a story that explains why we even feel the demand for such an answer. Right. This is, all right, what's the chances that we can just get rid of this guy? Our discussion provides a way to address the problem of truth, not by giving us one final universal definition, but by explaining why we feel the need for one in the first place. If we understand why truth feels objective, what affects our concrete experiences of truth, and how physical and social systems ultimately direct this development over time, then the problem changes shape. We may no longer have to imagine that the only satisfying answer would be some final access to truth. And then this would be the only part that offends, right? We have a story that explains why we feel the demand. Okay. So I say all this, and then I say this as if, like, if we had this, then we'd be in a different position. And then I say what the conclusion is here. So I think we could just get rid of that sentence. We are organisms trying to make sense of a world that feels as though it exceeds us, using standards we did not invent alone, feelings we do not fully control, and methods that are powerful precisely because they are limited. You say we don't need to know that, but that's directly relevant to someone managing uncertainty. Right. So we need to know what type of tips someone could use within their own life. So I will have to spend some time figuring out how to articulate that for an individual such that I could say this in a YouTube short. Like, I need to be able to teach something in a TikTok. That's going to be the deal here. For each of us, our sense of truth functions like an intangible yet authoritative ideal. So I think now that we got rid of that one, I think that we are fine, because this is a different type of statement that comes from us saying, once we understand these conditions, we can begin to think more carefully about potentially useful ways we can think and talk about truth. Potentially useful ways to understand truth. All right, and then so we rinse and repeat. I'm going to take the same, oh, no, I'm not going to rerun it. I got to take the same one. We got to get a new release, and we run it back. And we should be going high here. If you want to know how to communicate the concept clearly, this explains it well. Well, so I need more. I think I need more from you. I need to know the why and the what we would want to actually dive into. Like, how would you use this without a pen and a paper?
The Shannon entropy.
Like, this is not something we can teach. This guy right here, we're not putting latex. Which one is it? LaTeX is something else, right? Isn't LaTeX? Wasn't LaTeX something else? Coding language? No, that's LaTeX. Okay. What was LaTeX? I could have sworn I had to do something with LaTeX and I got the two confused. For example, if you're trying to quantify uncertainty given a set of probability, so you're not given a set of probability distributions. When do you have probability distributions within your everyday life? Like this is getting into complex tools of like you got to get a spreadsheet open. Now you got to take stuff from your life and you got to put into a spreadsheet. Then you're generating not even probability distributions. I mean, unless you set up a system in which like now you're determining how frequently something happens in your own life, but that's really difficult.
It's a way of measuring uncertainty or randomness in a set of outcomes. Often used in the context of information theory, here's an intuitive breakdown. Imagine you're trying to predict the outcome of an event. If the outcome is highly predictable, like flipping a coin that always lands on heads, there's little uncertainty and the entropy is low. But if the outcome is highly uncertain, like predicting the winner of a lottery ticket, the entropy is much higher. Think of it this way. Low entropy means you might already know the
This is just telling me what uncertainty is just through entropy here?
result. There's less surprise or uncertainty. High entropy means you might not know what will happen, and there's more surprise or uncertainty. Follow for more machine.
Oh man, so I know Shannon entropy is fine. Like once you get this, you've got a lot going on here. This didn't teach you anything though. This doesn't teach you. This basically says uncertainty is uncertainty, but it's just redefining one of the uncertainties on the other side of the equation. Oh my gosh, so women are high entropy. Oh, uncertainty? I think humans are high entropy in that regard. All right. What's good in okay life? All right, we got edits. I think this is close. I would not recommend restructuring. So it's going to keep saying that because I tell it I don't want restructuring. The main issue is that a few sentences state your position more strongly than the surrounding argument actually requires. All right, we would now regard as false. We would now regard as false. This is a rhetorically dangerous pivot. You are trying to show that truth feelings are historically conditioned, but we would now regard as false may sound like you're saying false only means false from within our current framework. That's exactly what I mean. That is more relativistic than your actual position because later you clearly want to preserve world constraint, error correction. Okay. No, I think that this is fine. I do want it to make this part be relativistic. Like we believe something to be true right now that in the future we're going to believe was wrong. And so this is like a scenario that plays itself out over and over again. We have to be relativistic to some regard. Now that's a different discussion though than like when we are trying to make an argument about what we should believe or something like that. But even then, the same deal applies. All right, the formula for linear regression analysis, as I understand it, is the independent variable equals the dependent variable multiplied by the slope plus. Yeah, so we're going to lose people if we try to say that. That's not tangible and actionable in people's everyday experience. I know it's relevant for statistical inference. It's certainly relevant for statistics. It needs to be usable within our life. I need to be able to think about this in my own experience. I don't have spreadsheets. That's the thing I'm trying to get at here. All right. 2, the chair example is doing slightly too much philosophical work. In that sense, the semantics is never purely descriptive, but fundamentally grounded in normativity. So this is what we got last time. I agree with the direction, but semantics is never purely descriptive is a large claim. Some viewers will hear it as words don't really describe reality. They only express social rules. Do I say merely? Purely. Okay. I feel like the precision here doesn't I think it does give us this wiggle room. That is not quite what you mean. You mean that our use and understanding of concepts is inseparable from learned standards of use, implication, correction, and appropriateness. Soften the claim without weakening the argument. In this sense, our grasp of meaning is not merely descriptive. It is also normative. All right. I do think that this is probably a good example, or I'm sorry, a good move to, especially since we do semantic here. So but we have to do semantic meaning then. Our grasp of semantic meaning is not merely descriptive, but no, it's not just that it's also normative. That's the thing. For number 2, we aren't just making the case that our grasp of this meaning just happens to also be normative. It's that this is actually grounded in normativity. The conditioning affects what we end up believing is semantic. So it's all coming from the conditioning. We're describing the conditioning through a normative lens here, given that our conditioning is largely social. Not only are we interacting with other people, but when we interact with just ourselves or the physical world, we interpret what's going on through socially conditioned language and reasoning. So at the end of the day, what we feel like is just semantic meaning would be more fundamentally grounded in normativity. That's the point we need to make. All right. For number two. All right, let's not move from there until we answer it. To be honest, I don't fully understand how you believe that the average person will understand this neuroscience and philosophy, but is somehow incapable of learning basic math. Yeah, that's a good point, and I think the distinction is going to be stuff that goes in part 1 is going to require understanding. Well, actually, a lot of the stuff in part 2 still, it's like the tips have to be that, like, practical tools have to be easy. But if you want to know why the practical tools are especially powerful, then you have to learn more. And that's what pushes you back to part 1. When even in part 1, we do want to, like, build up and not have to dive back down in each section. So even in here, like, I do mention certain aspects from the perception stuff, but I try not to go too deep into it, even though it is there. The goal would be to modularize and build up. Okay, my proposal weakened the actual claim. The issue is not that your original idea is too strong. The issue is that the word normativity may need one extra beat of explanation so the viewer understands what you're saying. Maybe. Oh, this is the first time we say normativity? Because in that case, yeah, I do actually agree. Meaning has a social normative layer added on top. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying what later appears to us as neutral semantic meaning is formed through norm-governed conditioning in the first place. So I'd revise my criticism this way. The sentence should stay strong, but it might benefit from a clarifying follow-up that prevents normativity from sounding like an abstract academic label. In this sense, semantics is never purely descriptive, but fundamentally grounded in normativity. What later feels like simple semantic meaning, and don't we have something similar? Oh, we say this later on, right? Where do I say this? Has been shaped through learned standards of attention, blah, blah, blah. The meaning of a word or a concept is therefore inseparable. Oh, this is great if we can link it up with the inseparable line. I guess that was the next sentence. So what later feels like simple semantic meaning, like direct innate semantic meaning. Innate semantic meaning. That is a chair. Are we still talking about the chair here? Where is this? Condition. That is a chair. So the child learns explicit semantic knowledge through this ongoing process of interaction and feedback. Child is conditioned. Nevertheless, similar process goes throughout our life. Oh, but then we have this. When we later reflect on what we know, we often overlook the pragmatic training that shaped our understanding in the first place. We imagine that we simply possess semantic knowledge that corresponds to a shared external truth, but underneath that reflective picture is a history of learned predispositions, resulting in what feels certain or uncertain, and what feels appropriate or inappropriate. In this sense, our grasp of semantic meaning is not merely descriptive, but fundamentally grounded in normativity. Now, is this going to be too close, though, what later feels like innate semantic meaning? Yeah, this is just going to restate the thing from the last sentence, or the last. It looks like you are just now restating what we just said in the previous paragraph, which we used to justify the point about normativity. All right. Let's see what it says about that. From the implicit learn. Okay, the meaning of a word or concept is inseparable from the how we learn. No, I don't want to say learn. I honestly don't want to say learned here. From the conditioning surrounding it, almost. In this sense, semantic knowledge meaning is never purely descriptive, it is grounded in normativity. To know what something means is already to have internalized standards for how it should be noticed, classified, inferred from, acted upon, and corrected. How about this? How it should be. To know what something means is already to have. Is to already have internalized, conditioned, internalized, how it should be norms for how it should be used, inferred, how it should be treated. Would that be it? And then when to use it. Something like that. That might be nice. Oh, this is kind of, I mean, is inseparable from the. I'd probably combine them like this. Okay, let's see how we did. To know what something means is already to have internalized standards. Oh, okay, no, it didn't combine them like I thought it was. How about combining like so? Let's see what we get for that. To already have, already to have, or rephrase because the current wording is slightly awkward. To know what something means is to have internalized norms. Oh, I see. Already here. It's not to already have, but it's to have already internalized. So this would have been like a hyphen here. Already internalized norms for how it should be treated. That's what I want to get at. Without the hyphen, I think it would be ambiguous. Consider treated carefully. It's good, but how it should be understood. How it should be perceived. When we're talking about pragmatism, there's a lot of discussions about like how to frame this, whether that would be like playing a move in a game in some sense. Like when I say something is a chair, I'm making a move, I'm treating it in a certain way, I'm doing something. Like it puts the activity on me as opposed to I guess in each case, I could, I could be just saying what I think it is, but it just frames what something is towards the activity of the people who are using it. Yo, Darmanon, what's good? How goes the Sterum? We are popping off. Actually, we are just slowly chiseling away at whatever the AI says is the weakest links of this essay. Oh, great question. All right, once we fix this up, I just want to make sure that we get a good word here. Understood and treated is actually, it probably covers our bases. Our bases, understood and treated. There we go. All right, and then that was for number 2, so we can jump to number 3. All right, but nevertheless, let's cut another release. And then let's ask this. We could do this on Medium. This annoying chatter keeps saying God is truth. GG. How do I debate him? Oh, we can't see that. I gotta go to the bottom right, I think. All right, here we go. A good way to debate him is not to attack God directly. Attack the move he is making with the word truth. Oh my gosh, did I not just say move? Is this thing hearing me? When someone says God is truth, they may be doing one of several things. A definitional move would be something like, I define God as truth itself. There's a metaphysical claim, like there exists a divine being who grounds all truth. They might be saying something like God is the highest reality or goodness in like a moral spiritual claim. If you reject God, you reject truth. Might be a rhetorical move. Those are not making the same claim. Make him pick one. Boom. We're playing the game of giving and asking for reasons. When you say God is truth, do you mean that you are defining God as truth, or do you mean there is a being called God who makes propositions true? Because those are different claims. The first 3. They say the first 3. All right, then make them separate the 3 claims and defend each one independently. Oh my gosh, yeesh. Okay. This is exactly how I say we should play the game of it depends by what you mean, but that's whatever the Jordan Peterson. I can't do a Jordan Peterson impersonation. I should practice one. Depends by what you mean. What you have to do if you pull that card is you have to iterate through the different meanings, and then you have to give your feedback for each one, or at least that would be a beneficial way to go about it. So if by God is truth you mean God is definitionally identical with truth, then I understand the phrase, but that does not yet prove anything religious. It only tells me how you're using the word God. Okay. So this is just pointing out that if you're going to define God by truth and truth by God, then that's fine, but you need to do a little more. Right? So if you mean God grounds all truth, that is a separate metaphysical claim. You would need to explain why truth cannot be grounded in reality, logic, consistency, language, evidence, or shared experience without God. That is a good point. You have to make the case as to if there wasn't a God, why would it look any different? This is the Wittgenstein argument. Like, what would it have looked like if there was no God? And it would look the same way. If you mean God is the highest reality or goodness, that is another separate claim. You would need to explain why truth and goodness are identical and why that identity should be called God rather than simply truth, reality, or the good. Interesting. These were not too bad. Not the most effective way to, I think, make those arguments, but I think they're on the right track in terms of like logical ways to point out contradictions and point out the responsibility you would have to have if you want to make such a claim. What would this essay specifically have for someone who is following the divine simplicity model? I do think it is pointless debate. Yep. As the classic theist view that God is not composed of parts and is identical with God's attributes, including truth, goodness, being. All right, for someone following divine simplicity, your essay would not directly refute their model. It would mainly challenge the epistemic confidence with which they move from God is truth itself to therefore my theological framework gives me privileged access to truth itself. Whoa. Classic divine simplicity says God is not composed of parts and that there is no real distinction between God and God's attributes. In that model, God does not merely have goodness, truth, wisdom, or being, but is identical with them in a clarified metaphysical sense. Your essay's strongest reply is something like this: even if God is identical with truth and reality, my access to that claim is still mediated through perception, language, inherited metaphysics, religious conditioning, and learned standards of validation. Yeah, the reason why you would feel that that is the case would be because of our culture. That matters because the divine simplicity person is often making a metaphysical claim about ultimate reality, while your essay is analyzing the conditions under which truth becomes intelligible to human beings. So the argument should be something like divine simplicity may claim that truth is ultimately identical with God, but the human claim God is truth still arrives inside embodied, cognitive, culturally inherited, norm-governed experience. So the doctrine cannot be used as though the speaker has escaped mediation and is now speaking from truth itself. So we argue that truth feels objective and binding, yet when we analyze how truth appears to us, we find biology, affect, prediction, language, culture, and social conditioning. It also warns against theories that claim to possess truth from outside the biological and normative conditions through which truth becomes intelligible. Not bad, not bad. I guess it was given the framing of a debate. Right. I guess. Well, probably because you said GG. That's where I think it got that from. I just started shadowboxing. I don't know who says divine simplicity means they have unique access. Maybe the Pope believes that. Ooh. Well, I think when they say unique, it's not that the individual is unique and it has it's the framing is unique in that the framing is right. And the framing that does not include God as in this way would be the unprivileged, not unique access. So I think that's what it's getting at there. It's like, I feel like my religion is right. So when I'm looking at this book, it's giving me access to the truth that other people don't have. This is unique to this book. That's the type of argument I think it's making. All right. Let's go back to criticizing this essay. What is this? Yeah, okay. That was number 3? Or was that number 2? Oh man, we got to go back to this. It's too sweeping. While we often imagine reasoning as formal, explicit, and deductive, answerable to some objective truth, reasoning is more fundamentally tentative and interpretive. Widesweek, this is probably the most Steelman-worthy objection. A rationalist or philosopher will say, no, some reasoning really is deductive, some standards of Right, we're trying to point out that what's happening under the hood is more akin to abductive reasoning, what we understand to be abductive reasoning. The way our brain reasons, generates reasons, is more akin to abductive. Is more fundamentally abductive. Let's just go with that and see if it yells at us next iteration. The compelling section has a great idea, but one sentence is stylistically clotted. Yikes. Pragmatically, if we want to teach, persuade, or argue with someone or understand why they believe what they believe, it may be simply ineffective to repeat the reasons that compel our own selves. Yeah, that's okay. It did pick that out. That's probably good. That's probably for the best. Because I switched it from ourselves that compel ourselves. I want to make it that compel each of us. That we individually find compelling. Repeat the reasons that we each individually find compelling, which is rather ironic. Okay, let's go with that. A physical state simply is. So it keeps coming back to this one, so maybe there is something seriously wrong about this. For me, it's about if you have this divine simplicity, Brahman metaphysics and theology, then that is the only thing it makes sense to call truth. Yeah, I mean, if you went in that framing, then that would be the thing that you would want to call truth. But the problem is, when you say truth, you're going to now conflict with what other people expect out of that type of concept and that type of word. Which is why we've been pretty careful about our experience of truth and saying like our sense of truth and stuff like that. Stan, there are many examples of math which people don't understand that is practical until they encounter it. For example, Jensen's inequality, which says that for convex functions, the average of the function is greater than or equal to the function of the average. Which says that for convex functions, okay. Sometimes used by portfolio. Right. We're not giving a how-to guide for portfolio managers. I need you to tell me how it's important for you in your everyday life. Like you notice something on the street and now you're going to use this math in your head. Like, we're not talking about portfolio managers. We're not talking about people that, like computer scientists. We're not talking about people that have a lot of data. We're not talking about anyone with a spreadsheet. No spreadsheets allowed. We don't have the data. We don't have the distributions. These need to be pretty clear concepts in our own life. I have a calculator in my pocket. I'm good. Very nice. That's a reason you should do a math deep dive, because you don't know what's relevant until you learn about it. That is true. So when like I guess just to put this to rest, the feedback I'm giving you right now is at some point I'm going to look into the math. I'm going to figure out what we can dumb down to make easy for each person in their everyday life. I will do that. If you have any suggestion of a clear way of doing that, not a clear way of doing that, a clear thing I might get, like you already did the work. Like if you went ahead and did the work instead of me and then you gave me suggestions, but they're clear suggestions and you explain why they can be beneficial for someone in their everyday experience, that would be helpful. But I like just hearing about these different math principles and how they're important for a portfolio manager isn't going to help me. Not now and not when I dive into this stuff. Like with AI, all I have to do is I have to ask what statistical tools would be benefit. I mean, I guess, we will do this, so don't feel the need to put this into AI, get something, and then just throw it at me. Because we're also not working on that right now. I can't be, doing too much in that regard until we actually decide we're going to start doing that, which might be after this video essay. Did you go deep on Bayes? Isn't that huge for predictive processing theory? Oh my gosh. I'm getting trolled. All right, we got to move on from that stuff. Okay. A physical state simply is risks confusing truth with meaning. A physical state simply is, apart from interpretation, it does not mean anything, assert anything, justify anything, or present itself as true or false. This is a strong passage, but needs slightly more precision. A skeptical viewer could object, but physical states can make propositions true or false. I would point out to the skeptical viewer that it's not the physical state directly that is making the proposition true or false. It's our empirical measurement of the physical state. So if we could somehow make that nuance captured in our current passage, that's what I would want to put there. Oh, this is what? This is number 5? For number 5. All right. It's chewing on that. Right? I don't want to say that. The physical state constrains what can be validly claimed, but it only becomes evidence for or against a proposition through measurement, blah, blah, blah. By itself, it does not mean anything, assert anything, justify anything, or present itself as true or false. It becomes evidence for or against a proposition only when it is met. But once again, this is also missing a mark. Missing the mark. Once again, this is also missing the mark because it makes it seem like when we measure a state of the physical world that we are actually grasping that state of the physical world, as if the thing that we just measured was the actual state, when really the thing that we're measuring is just some empirical perspective that is heavily affected by our biology and our tools of measurement. And then not only that, but when that becomes conscious to us, as I mentioned earlier in this essay, there's yet another step of separation here where what we consciously experience is not the same thing as what we would take in, the sensory stimuli that we're taking in. All right. This is the trick, the nuance that we need to capture here. But I do like that it does not by itself, more than I like the other thing suggested. I see the problem. My version still treated measurement as though it gives us the physical state, just in a mediated public form, but your point is more radical and more consistent with the essay. We do not measure the physical state itself in some perspective-free way. We generate an empirical interface with the world through bodies, instruments, concepts, and procedures. Then even that empirical interface becomes consciously available only after further perceptual and interpretive processing. So the passage should emphasize that. No, let's not emphasize the layers. How about let's start with what we had originally, and then if there's anything brief and subtle that we could add to it that would capture what I'm really trying to say, then put it there. But I don't want to blow this thing up, and we definitely don't have to talk about those layers of mediation that we talk about earlier in the essay. All right, coming after this thing pretty hard. All right. The average person with a Roth IRA only cares for buying ETFs and seeing the number go up. They can barely read an SEC filing. This is me you're describing. I don't think they'll care for anything more advanced. Right. So I think even just telling someone to do the Roth IRA probably is too far than we can say within the scope of this document. We can tell people to look up good personal finance, and that's going to tell them to get the Roth IRA if appropriate for their situation. But yo, Zeruxel, TF. Physical state is just a vector in Hilbert state. That's beyond me. I don't know what that sentence means. Stan, add in top 5 stoicism quotes for Sigma males, please. Very nice. Bro, single-handedly training OpenAI with these voice notes. Perhaps, yeah. I meant Hilbert space. Oh, right. It's just a vector in Hilbert space. When you said it aloud, I recognized the typo. All G. Okay. The physical state simply is. It does not by itself mean anything, assert anything, justify anything, or present itself as true or false. Even measurement does not make the state speak for itself. It gives us a discipline mediated way of relating to it. So I think this goes without saying, given all we've talked about. Meaning only emerges for organisms that perceive, classify, act, and communicate. And this would be like, this is inherently talking about the measurement here. Objects, events, and causes manifest in our conscious experience through learned patterns of attention, perception, and language. All right, let's just let it rip. It's going to yell at us, but let's just take it on the chin here. All right, let's run another one. Oh, did I not? Oh, I did. Okay, thank goodness. I was going to say, did I not copy that? All right, we're running it through again. Ironic. I understand you want your document to be general and not overly specific, but quite a few people invest and everyone has to save, so finance tips should be included. It just cannot be included. There's too much stuff to include in this thing. We cannot go that deep. Also, there's too many facets where if we were to go exactly as deep as financial tips, then this thing would blow up. It would be way too big. We'd have to. I mentioned this earlier. We'd have to do tips about fitness, about diet. We'd have to do tips about. I think we will do tips about sleeping, certainly. But we'd have to like go deeper into these other topics. There's certain topics I think we need to go deep into. Finance is not going to be one that we go too deep into. That being said, once this, as we're going on, I think I want the community to become more of a thing in itself besides this document. So if the community wants to compile a document of where to find the best personal finance advice, then that would be all good with me. I would be don't lose money and never forget rule 1. Amen. It's easy to generate rule what to ask AI to understand how to live our lives and not write the whole document. I think I'm parsing that. Like why we need the document if we can just ask AI. Right. That is a good point. Yeah, so I think there's going to be certain the problem with AI is it's so generalized because it's learning on everything. So like if you were to ask like how do you benefit your life, like it will give you good tips and stuff, but it's not going to get like there is going to be something inherently philosophical about this document, and it's the philosophical introduction or the thing that I'm actually contributing. The contribution is how we can specifically think about the relationship we have with our own life and with our own goals and within, with all the stuff we talk about here and with our own freedom, right? Life, goals, freedom. That's the special sauce of this document. So even though when you ask that question to AI, it's going to give you like what you can do kind of right now. It's going to tell you the things to look into. It might not tell you specifically how to like maintain that relationship. Now that's something you could just prompt the AI to keep doing. Like AI is good enough to just, take over in some sense. So ideally what we would want is we would want the document inserted into the AI, and then we ask the AI what to do in a certain situation, and then the AI would use the document to leverage those certain framings and then do that. But yeah, so I don't think the document's going to be like something that people use in some sense, in the sense of like reading it. It might be something that I use to organize these ideas that people refer to, like maybe it's just a reference. We hyperlink to certain sections of the document so that if you were interested in a certain. Like the one thing that I'm going to be doing that I think is going to be beneficial is compiling topics. Like if you were to ask what is perception or how does perception work, it might not give you something as fun, let's just say, as the perception essay. If you were to ask what truth is, it's not going to give you this type of view because this is a very specific type of view that I think we're allowed to make, but it's not like the first thing that AI would jump and give you. How will you know who to recommend for finance advice if you don't understand the finance advice yourself? Well, the nice thing about the way that we set up things in this document or the framework of freedom here is if you don't know how to do something, then the goal would be to look up how to learn how to do something. So I'm not going to tell someone where to go for finance advice. I'm going to tell them that they should find finance advice. And now it's on them to figure out who to find finance advice from. Now, if the community wants to find the people that they should look to, then they can. I would recommend just going to r/personal finance. They've got a wiki, and it's got all things for each age range throughout your life, the types of topics that you would want to look into. But for the document, it's just like, you know, you should look into personal finance. That's it. That's all we're going to say. Boom. It's better to write, okay, a document which explains what to ask AI and how to ask AI to get good results, not document which contains answer to... We don't want to go too hard on the AI thing. We're trying to compile information here. We're not trying to compile prompts. I'm trying to learn the stuff, so I'm partly learning it by compiling it. Stan, please give personal finance advice. It would make a Marxist critique of this so easy. Yeah, I don't think I would want to give personal finance advice other than to go and look at that, you know, to find personal finance advice. I think that is good advice. All right, what do we got? Weakest points I'm seeing are mostly local, places where a sentence either overloads the viewer, sounds more relativistic than you intend, or compress a controversial move more too quickly. What do we got? Oh, here we go. Here we go. We got something new. All right, this is conceptually accurate, but it asks a lot of the viewer very early. Predictive processing, all that stuff. The opening before this is clean and cinematic. This paragraph suddenly becomes lecture dense. 2 or 3 simpler beats. All right, we're going to be critical about whether this is retaining the things that we need. All right, it would be nice to say something like, instead of... passively, I don't want to say record, observing reality, passively taking it in reality. That would be an effective contrast for a viewer. Actively builds a model of the world. So it's not building a model of the world in like the way that we'd want. So this is the issue with that type of jam. So I'm not sure what to do about this. I might want to do something like, to make it clear, for number one, rather than dumbing it down, I think it would be more effective to make it clear that there was a specific video essay that explains all this, and if what I'm saying here doesn't check out, then they might want to look into that video. However, I think that your suggestions lose the nuance of these ideas that I would want to still include here. All right, that's kind of the that's the best I could do. Top 10 books Sigma males read to up their Sigma male status. Very nice. The Stammerton stream summary. Very nice. I gotta catch up on the daily stream summaries. Those are way late. And then I also have to put out the June summary on Substack. To be fair, it's just AI slop and not Sigma male quotes. We got to add them. Aurelius Mark. Nice. In this channel, we've explored a strange but increasingly influential way of thinking about perception, one I've discussed more fully in a previous essay. Basic ideas that the brain... This would be nice, actually. This is really early on. Basic ideas that the brain does not passively receive reality as it is. It appears to actively generate a predictive, actionable model of reality, drawing on attention, memory, sensory input. No, the sensory input is inherent here, and bodily needs, all in the service of helping the organism regulate itself. There we go. So it would be. I think this is nicer. So that the brain does not passively receive reality as it is in itself. As it is. We got to be careful about this. We just need to be careful about that phrase, reality as it is, because it seems to now start off our essay with this idea that there is some true reality that could be taken in. Oh, we already had this. The model. This model... Oh, the model. This model is continuously constrained by the physical world through sensory input, keeping us tethered to a reality that we can only make sense of through our subjective perspective. So this is more clear about that. So we just have to... No, I think we could just... I'll put up a video here and I'll just link this. Like this will be a link, and then in the video I'll put a picture up. Yo, Chaos 32s! Are you not worried to use an AI that's biased towards leftist ideas? Wouldn't a neutral one be better? Well, I don't think that the stuff that we're talking about would be prone to left versus right bias in general. I'm usually just looking for the thing that's going to be most effective at what we're looking into. And more recently, I've been happier with ChatGPT's writing. I'm a little scared about Grok because of the lack of care that they're putting into safety. And maybe it's changed, but I think they like put almost zero into safety, whereas these other companies put a little more. Stop believing the communist propaganda. Use Grok. No, I think I would use Google next, then I would use Claude, and then I would use Grok. That would probably be the order. I would probably use a self-hosted model before I use Grok. Would I use the Facebook self-hosted model before I use Grok? That one's tough. Maybe not. Yeah, I'm not sure. But if that was a test, Chaos 32, and I failed, then so be it. All right. What do we got? What do we got going on here? I just need to send this. Yes, yes, yes. We've explored blah, blah, blah. Especially in the... I won't re-argue the whole framework here, but the basic idea is this. The brain appears to actively generate a predictive actionable model. So this just starts out now? But the basic idea is all right, is that the brain appears to act, so we really didn't get too much out of this. We just got the basic idea is that why does this look shorter though? Do we lose something? No. Oh, and then we also say it right here, so we don't need to add that extra thing. I'm worried that it's saying things because I'm giving it some small section of the essay. For some reason, it's not like reading the rest of it. What number was that? That was probably 1, right? 2? Number 2. Science history section is a little too compressed and teleological. The exact passage, but the practical need to predict, control, and communicate about the empirical world with greater precision created pressure for more specialized standards of evidence. And then over time, the recognizable beginnings of modern scientific standards emerged. The issue is not that this is wrong in spirit, it's that it sounds a little too clean, as if modern science naturally emerged from a single pressure toward precision. A skeptical viewer could hear this as an overly smooth history of reason story. Okay. This is going to be in our development of meta norms here. Right? Across a long and uneven history. No, this is what they're suggesting. Over time is what I'm looking for. Oh, we've got 2 over times. Claims should be, okay. This is where we talk about the standards of evidence. But in many contexts, the practical need to predict, control, and communicate about the empirical world with greater precision created pressure for more specialized standards of evidence. That would do the trick. We could do this as well to get rid of the second over time here. Across a long and uneven history. I don't know if I like that though. Across a long can I? Oh no, I could do that. Okay. Can we get one that's a little closer to the original? Boom, let's run that. All right. Use self-hosted interface Odysseus, for example, and find some neutral one. And what's this truth about? TLDR, anyone? Well, do you trust that ChatGPT is going to give an effective TLDR of the document? Or is it going to start throwing in like Biden compliments or something like that? I can't see that much text. Theories of truth and philosophy. This is... All right. Can you give an effective TLDR of this essay? Let's do a high here. This is about Boris Krieger, like the objective truth. 100%. No, it's Marxist-Leninist propaganda. I'm no joking. Oh my gosh. I see. All right, here we go. TLDR, the essay argues that truth is not something we access from a neutral, outside perspective. Instead, truth appears to us through embodied perception, unconscious prediction, social conditioning, language, culture, and learned standards of reasoning. But this does not mean truth is just subjective or that all beliefs are equally valid. The physical and social world pushes back against us, and developed practices like logic, evidence, and science help us reduce error, coordinate with others, and test claims more reliably. The core idea is truth feels objective because our brains generate a stable, meaningful world that seems independent of us. This is what we get from our perception essay. So this is not actually covered here. But if you're interested, Chaos 32, that we've got a video essay on the channel called Explaining Perception. It's a little long, but it's kind of a banger. All right, but what feels true is shaped by biology, bodily state, memory, culture, language, and the norms we have internalized. The essay then builds this out in stages. Perception is mediated, not direct. We never encounter reality as it is in itself. We experience an interpreted world generated by the brain and constrained by sensory input. So, truth begins as a felt regulatory commitment. The organism has to act as though some things are real, relevant, dangerous, useful, or false. Through the topic of like predictive processing, this would be a prediction about the state of things in some sense. Now, of course, there's like a more sophisticated way to talk about all that underlying processing, but we don't need to talk about it right now. Our immediate sense of truth is provisional, embodied, and action guiding. And we get all this stuff. I mean, obviously we get this stuff from the neuroscience, but we can see how intuitive this is through phenomenology. This is the type of story that arises in phenomenology. Shared truth emerges through social conditioning. We learn meanings, categories, and standards from others. A child learns chair not through abstract definition, but through repeated social and physical feedback. This makes learned meanings feel obvious and objective. Reasoning is also conditioned. What counts as a good reason, valid evidence, or rational explanation depends partly on norms we've inherited. Disagreement often happens not just over facts, but over what counts as truth validating in the first place. So if we have different understandings, then we might think through these issues differently. The issue of what is true, how you're supposed to explain what is true, like what types of reasons are effective and comprehensive, which are appropriate. Science is powerful but limited. Scientific norms are among our best tools for reducing shared error about the empirical world because they emphasize public evidence, measurement, replication, and criticism. But science still operates within human concepts and cannot answer every moral, existential, or interpretive question. Moral truth follows the same pattern. Moral convictions feel objective and binding, but they also arise through biology, affect, culture, development, and social reinforcement. Science can inform moral decisions, but it cannot by itself decide what ought to matter. So the practical takeaway is we should keep using the idea of shared truth because it helps us coordinate, reason, and hold claims accountable. But we should also ask, why does this feel true to me? What standards am I using? What evidence would change my mind? What conditions shape my sense of certainty? In one sentence, truth is something we are genuinely answerable to, but we only ever navigate it from within embodied, conditioned experience. So it's something that we feel genuinely answerable to, not are here. How is that for a TLDR? All right, should we do it? Should we have fun here? Now, could you explain this to a 5-year-old? Oh, actually no. Let's actually play the title here. Sorry. I don't get it. This forces that cultural norms might be the truth, but not all. It tries going into skepticism, then bugs out. Let's see if this is any good. Should I give my answer? Do you want me to give my answer before it gives its answer? Or should we just jump into its answer? So it's pointing out that we're not going to be Jesus. we're not interested in like some clear static answer of what is true here. Like, and the reason why we're not interested in that is because we could see how relative and dynamic this process is. So when we're looking at cultural norms, we can see that what people understood to be true has developed over time. We understand things to be true that we might in 100 years feel to be wrong. And so we can only navigate truth from within our current standpoint here. And we have an understanding of what is true and what's not true just based on our own conditioning. And our conditioning is largely affected by our culture. So I wouldn't say that our cultural norms are the truth, but they affect what we end up experiencing to be true. The skepticism we can't go full skepticism because other people strongly believe things to be true. I strongly believe things to be true, and not in like a deliberate way. Like my brain believes things that regardless of what I might deliberately want, I can't get out of. I cannot make myself not believe that this is a pen. I'm not allowed to do that, no matter how much I consciously want to do that. It would require a lot of deconditioning for that to occur. So we have to realize that I'm not in charge. These processes underneath conscious awareness are in charge at the end of the day. And so we are still beholden to certain conditioned norms. You know, it's like crime and punishment. If I were to do something that my conscience, who's the conscience? It's those underlying processes. That my underlying processes decides to be, I shouldn't say decide, but whatever affects guilt, then it will affect that feeling of guilt on me, and I will suffer for it. Do you imply that we get closer to truth due to culture? I would once again reject this idea that there is a static truth that we get closer to. If we want to think about like some idealistic getting closer to the truth, it would have to involve something like leveraging standards of reasoning, logic, and empirical science to reduce uncertainty about the empirical world and what would allow us to operate within life with the most predictive power in some sense. So it's reducing uncertainty with which we engage with the world we experience. So I do think of it as an evolution type process, but it's not getting closer to the final truth. It's always going to just keep going. That's the thing. But we've certainly developed tools that are much more effective than what people had 2,000 years ago at reducing uncertainty about what we face in the world. Your read is basically right. The essay is trying to avoid saying truth is just cultural norms, but it doesn't fully explain how to get from conditioned standards of truth to truth itself. The essay's intended distinction seems to be cultural norms are not truth itself. They are the conditions that shape what feels true, what counts as a good reason, what evidence seems valid, and what authorities feel trustworthy. If you're conditioned by those cultural norms, that's the idea. So it plays itself out pragmatically. I'm not trying to say that cultural norms have a certain. I'm getting like attacked by a bug right now. It's not that they have a certain status. It's that they are going to physically affect the processing in your brain. That's going to affect your understanding. So the connections in your brain. It's going to then affect the experience you have of what you understand and how you perceive the world. But the essay also says not everything is arbitrary because the physical and social world push back. Fire burns you whether your culture says it should or not. Scientific methods work better than many alternatives for predicting and controlling the empirical world. So the essay is trying to reject both naive objectivism and pure relativism. The problem is that it leaves an awkward gap. It says truth feels objective, but our experience of truth is mediated by biology, culture, and conditioning. Then it adds, but the world constrains us, so not all beliefs are equally valid. That helps, but it does not fully answer the deeper question. Constrained by what standard? Where are we at here? Constrains us. Okay, first for the constrained by what standard, it's more so that it's constrained by sensory input, sensory signals. That's the constraining that that phrase was referring to. So the question is, should I? All right, we have to deny this one, unfortunately. Okay. How do you solve the final say in the truth? I can think of Brazilian countries right now that still practice that. Right? We talk about morality. All right, morality. Here we go. Nevertheless, we each feel as though not all moral views are equally valid and that there are meaningful ways to distinguish between better or worse ways of living together. Our own moral convictions often prevent us from treating every moral view as equally acceptable. If we experience something as deeply wrong, we feel compelled to do something about it and perhaps make others see it in the same way too. It may be part of our moral responsibility to spread the word, so to speak. Part of moral life can involve or demand trying to make our moral intuitions compelling to others so that others will act in ways we believe are good and avoid acting in ways we believe are harmful. Now, of course, in a situation where a country is doing something that we find reprehensible, then it would be my moral obligation to advocate for us punishing that country in some regard. So the question isn't like, it doesn't go down to who is the right person at the end of the day. From my own point, I feel like I'm right, right? That's the point. I feel as though my understanding is right. Now, I'm not going to say just because everyone feels a different thing is right that they're all equal, because my way of thinking might make it so that I don't want them to think the way that they think, because they're going to do something that I think is terrible. So that's the point I would want to make there. We do not want to fall into some complete relativism. But what moral views are we even debating? If we all settled that overall, well-being should be number one priority, maybe, right? I mean, I'm compelled by that argument. I think the argument against suffering and towards well-being is pretty compelling. And the countries that don't practice that, and they practice something that takes away people's rights and, you know, is leads to suffering, I would say that that's bad. And unfortunately, as a pleb here, I don't have too much say in the matter. So I try to elect people that I think would be most likely to actually push back on those types of behaviors. But you're overreacting. Now, this is the fun stuff. This is where, you know, like, these questions I could actually answer. I mean, there's a lot of the questions in the past few days I haven't been able to, like, effectively answer, because I think they're like, they're two category error. Like, I don't know if that's the way to describe it, but this is one that I could easily answer, so I'm pretty stoked about it. We don't have to go through all this. I do want to ask about the Explain Like I'm 5, though. Can you explain this video essay to a 5-year-old? I feel I was right with the left-leaning ideas. Too much freedom for dirtbags with horrible values. I said it as well. Punishment is in the cards, you know? That's not freedom, right? Like, I don't understand what pragmatically you might be suggesting here. What can you do as an individual about this? And that does end up becoming a question also about not accept that truth, be treated that way. Be treated what way? I mean, pragmatically, in our everyday life here, I'm going to say that it is bad what they're doing. I'm not going to say that they can have that from experiences of a subject. what we're pointing out here is not what is good and what is bad, or what is true and what isn't true. It's pointing out how human beings can only perceive truth. Like, we can never go outside of our subjective experience and find the criteria or the curriculum that tells us what is the truth. So yeah, I would not be one to just say that, like, you know, in an actual conversation outside of this philosophical framing, like, this is a low level discussion of truth here. But in our everyday discussion of how we talk about truth, where we do feel like it's answerable to things, I'm going to play by the rules that I think we should follow, and those happen to be the rules that I think that other people follow. But the question would be is, like, imagine you get plucked out of this world, right? Or like not plucked out of this this timeline or whatever, and you get plucked into one where everyone is reprehensible morally, right? What are you going to do? Like, now you're in a position where you do have the subjective point of view that what is wrong is what everyone's doing. And so the question is, do you have the courage to actually stay true to what you believe to be is right and true? Or, do you slowly succumb to the conditioning that makes people do reprehensible things when they see other people doing them, which is when we look into all that ordinary men stuff, that's what we see. People do just slowly become more what we would describe as immoral if they're around other people doing stuff that are immoral. So why not? I want to say based, but gonna banned. You're not gonna get banned for saying based. Nothing I saw changed my mind to believe. Ah. Damn. This is a free speech channel, except for certain types of the only thing I don't want here is like toxic, like toxicity. Like, we got to be they won't ban you. I'm wondering whether you're saying that I'm overreacting or that they are overreacting me. Like, as if I'm getting trolled in a sense. All right. The video essay is asking, how do we know what is true? Imagine your brain is like a little helper inside your head. Your brain is always trying to guess what is happening. Is that a chair? Is that fire dangerous? Is that person happy or angry? Can I trust what someone told me? Your brain does not see the world like a perfect camera. It makes guesses using what your eyes and ears notice, what your body feels, what you remember, what other people taught you, and what has happened to you before. So when you say that is true, your brain is usually saying, this seems right to me because of what I've learned and what the world is showing me. But here is the tricky part. Different people learn different things. So something can feel very obvious to one person, but strange to another person. The essay is not asking, everything is pretend. I'm sorry, it's not saying everything is pretend. It is saying there is a real world, but each of us understands it through our own brain, body, feelings, and learning. So this is fine for an explain to a 5-year-old, but I don't want to even say something like there is a real world, because that sounds so metaphysically charged. Now, granted, we could say that there is a physical world in the context of, we're making sense of this physical stimuli that's affecting our perception. And it also makes sense of how we would perceive the world in the way that we do, but that's a little charged language. Like, if you touch a fire, the world pushes back. It is hot and you move away. So truth is not just whatever you want. The world can correct you. Science is like a big group of people saying, let's check carefully. Let's measure it. Let's see if other people get the same answer. Let's show our work. That helps people make fewer mistakes. So the whole video is basically saying, Truth is like trying to understand the world while wearing special glasses made from your brain, your body, your feelings, your memories, and what people taught you. The world is real, but we never see it without our glasses. And the lesson is, be careful about what feels true, ask why it feels true, listen to other people, check the world, and keep learning. All right, let's go to up to 10 years old. Unless this is just too much. If we want to just move on, we could jump back to the workshopping, the draft feedback. Very wrong ideas, Stan, but I've been saying that for 5 years now. Well, where are the right ideas? Let me see them. Let me have them. Okay. The compelling framing is strong because it connects truth, affect, reasoning, and communication, but this particular phrasing risks sounding like the point is truth is whatever rhetoric successfully compels someone. Do I actually say that? So I've asked you why you have a certain belief, and I'm so far not compelled by the reasons you've given me. You might then cater your reasons to what you think I would be compelled by, connecting your perspective to... Okay, so I disagree with this. A physical state simply is. It's probably the most vulnerable philosophical claim. Yeah, this is actually a difficult philosophical claim to make, because when we start talking about is, now we're like also dealing with some, you know, Heidegger existential crap that we don't want to get tied up into. A physicalist, semantic naturalist, or cognitive scientist might object. Meanings, assertions, representations, and justifications are themselves physically realized. So the sentence may sound like it accidentally smuggles in dualism you probably do not want. Yeah, I think we've just, at this point in the essay, we've already done so much to explain why that wouldn't be, but maybe that's not the case. For number 4, I would argue that we've done so much in this essay so far that would make this claim not seem to imply what the physicalist might object to. No, that's not what I was going for. For number 4, isn't it the case that this essay already explains the distinction about what we're saying here? That despite the fact that the physicalist might believe that the meanings are embedded in the physical reality itself, that we would only acquire this meaning, or at least what we intuitively feel consciously is the meaning, through our experience. Of course, we do have the fact that this meaning or this conscious experience starts with these underlying processes, which does involve something more akin to predictive processing than some sort of naive cognitivism. All right. And then what do we got? Preserve shared truth language sounds too fictionalist. Given that we arrive at pragmatically similar understandings with others, it may be practically useful to preserve the notion of a shared truth, even while recognizing that every person navigates truth through conditioned experience. We can coordinate as though there is some authority that our beliefs and claims are answerable to. Preserve the notion. And as though may unintentionally make shared truth sound like a useful fiction. It is. That's the point. All right. So when I talk about things that are true here, like these are these useful, and it's not fiction in the sense that this isn't going to sound salient to you. It's going to certainly match your understanding about how we ought to talk about things in the world. But it is still a fiction in the sense that there's nothing in the sky that says it's blue, right? So when I say the sky is blue, like I'm stating a fact in some sense, right? I'm sitting a fact in the sense of how we see it. The sky looks blue, right? So yeah, I guess the physicalist would obviously easily be able to put that make a more nuanced statement. I should more so it would be a question like, this is a pen, right? This is a pen, and nothing about the physical world just says that this is a pen. Like, the pen only arises with a relationship between the perceivers and the physical world, in the sense, the stimuli, basically. Okay. So I'd revise. Okay, but does not by itself mean anything, assert anything, or just or present itself as true or false? I think the phrase by itself is doing most of the necessary work, but if you wanted to make it even safer without losing force, the small adjustment would be considered by itself. What does that mean? Considered by itself. I don't know. I think we're hitting the edge here. We keep getting like the same stuff. Oh wow. I'm sorry. I'm late on these messages. This definition would make good case for no free will. I don't know for truth. Yeah, we do make the case about free will. That the only thing that we have is a feeling that we are free, right? We have this feeling that we are free and that we could do all these things, but when we look into the underlying science and the underlying stuff going on with our brain, it does not seem like we have perfect, or we don't have that type of libertarian free will where we could have done otherwise or could do otherwise given all the same startup or setup. So we would make that case. Now, the part that I think that it hasn't been said here, of course, is the whole discussion from that perception essay. I mean, that perception essay explains why we're allowed to make these types of claims. So even though these claims might seem like I'm just pulling them out of a hat and I'm just like feeling like this is compelling to me, you know, I'm really making these claims based on what we learned in that perception essay, and it's not trivial. So, did you read The Myth of Marx Materialism? I did not. Oh, that was Onion Helmet. Pitch it to me. But you can just read the abstract of the paper to understand what it's about. Basically, Marx never defended any materialist ontology, and by materialism understood economic reductionism is in some sense. You won't get good philosophical defense from ChatGPT. It just agrees with you on every question. Depends what your prompt is. You could tell it to not agree with you. That's actually what I was doing in that one. I was saying I want to know which specific instances of the essay you think are currently weakest. So that's how you get that type of feedback. If you say, but yeah, I do agree about this feedback stuff. That's the issue. So if I were to run it again, it's going to have beef with those instances, and then I'm going to give it the feedback, and it's going to be like, yes, your feedback's right, and then blah, blah, blah. So I don't know how much I could do about that. I just kind of put my own intuition in there, be a little authoritative. Okay. All right. Oh, okay. So for the 10-year-old, it starts talking about morality. So the video essay is asking a big question. How do we know what is true? Imagine your brain is not like a camera. A camera just takes a picture. Your brain is more like a smart guess-making machine. It uses eyes, ears, memories, feelings body and past experiences to build a picture of the world. So when you see a chair, you do not usually think, is that a chair? You just see it as a chair. But you learn that from other people, from using chairs, from hearing the word chair, and from seeing what chairs are for. The essay's main idea is truth feels like it is out there in the world, but we only ever understand truth through our own brains and experiences. That does not mean truth is fake or that everyone can believe whatever they want. The real world still pushes back. If you touch fire, it burns you. If a bridge is weak, it may collapse no matter what someone believes. So reality matters. The physical world matters. But people can still disagree because they learned different things, trust different people, and have different ideas about what counts as good proof. One person might say, I know it's true because I saw it. Another might say, I need a scientific study. Another might trust a parent, teacher, religion, or news source. The essay says science is one of our best tools for checking facts because it asks people to measure things, test them, repeat them, and let others check their work. But science cannot answer every question, especially questions like what is the right thing to care about or what kind of person should I be? For morality, the essay says our sense of right and wrong also comes from our bodies, feelings, families, cultures, and experiences. That does not make morality meaningless, but it means we should think carefully about why someone feels right or wrong to us, why something feels right or wrong to us. So for a 10-year-old, the lesson is your brain helps you understand the world, but it also shapes how the world feels to you. Truth is not just whatever you feel, but you also never see truth from outside your own mind. So the best thing we can do is keep learning, check our beliefs, listen to others, ask for good reasons, and be willing to change our minds when the world shows us we are wrong. We were wrong. Oh, another fun question I can ask this thing is what was asked yesterday. Can I find that? Let's see if I can do this. Docs or no docs? No docs. All right. No, I don't want to accidentally do that. Oh, we got a message. Okay, so yesterday someone said something like level. Like what is the level that you need? Certain level exactly. What levels of learn? Okay, Birdbanes. What is the level of learnedness expected? Right? Expected for the paper. So that's the question I want to ask. What is the level of learnedness expected for this essay? Surely the shorthand and some big words require some prerequisites of that nature. Prerequisite understanding. Have we lost it? I don't know if it's actually doing anything right now. Oh, nope, it got me. Yes. Yes. As written, the essay expects a fairly learned reader, not necessarily a specialist, but someone already comfortable with philosophy, cognitive science, and abstract theoretical vocabulary. I would place it around an upper undergraduate, early graduate seminar level, or a highly educated general audience that already likes theory-heavy essays. The issue is not only the big words, it is that many terms are doing compressed conceptual work. For example, active inference, affective interpretation, regulatory processing, abductive normativity, semantic meaning, epistemic norms. These are not just decorative vocabulary. Each one assumes some prior orientation to debates in perception, epistemology, philosophy of language, philosophy of science, blah, blah, blah. A general reader can follow the mood of the essay, but may not fully understand the machinery. They may get the broad claim, truth feels objective, but our access to truth is mediated by embodied socially conditioned experience, while missing the sharper philosophical moves. My practical diagnosis for a general YouTube audience, this is too dense and less slowed down, with more definitions and fewer stacked abstractions. Probably the case. For a philosophy, cognitive science audience, the level is appropriate, but they may expect more explicit references to existing debates. Ooh, references. Yikes. I could just point to the past, though. Is there anything that I introduce here that hasn't been referenced in the last account? For your likely intended audience, smart non-specialists interested in consciousness, truth, and meaning, it is close, but it needs more scaffolding. The best fix is to not dumb it down. It's to add short transition sentences after dense claims. For example, by normativity, I simply mean our learned sense that some uses, reasons, interpretations, or actions are appropriate while others feel mistaken or abducted. Okay. Yeah, I just feel like these are so lame. Have you done Battleground God on stream? Battleground God on stream to test consistency. Oh, have we done this? I felt like this is something that we've seen before. What is Battleground God? A simple logic philosophy quiz designed to point out inconsistencies in your faith. I think we did this, right? Okay. Oh, what was the message? Oh, I see. It was a quote, or I'm sorry, it was a URL. I think we've done this. I think that I get click the no. What the hell is this? Oh, we are at the wrong place. Oh my gosh, I just got by a 16-year-old link here. All right, let's use this one. Okay, can your beliefs about religion make it across our intellectual background battleground? I'm gonna say no. So the issue is gonna be there's gonna be a question that's gonna be ambiguous that I'm not gonna like. Don't download that. Got it. So like this, boom. We're already stuck, right? This is assuming that we are all on the same page as to what this question is even asking, right? God exists. What do we mean by God? And this essay is not going to allow for any nuances here. So I don't know what's going to go on here. So let's try to just entertain this, right? If a God exists in the sense of a creator, I'm going creator, right? I think it would only be a creator. It's not going to be someone that's still lurking around. It's not going to be any of the gods that our cultures have developed, because those cultures are just developed from humans trying to make sense of the world. So they end up coming up with all these archetypes and these stories and whatnot, and they are roughly shared across cultures because our DNA is shared across cultures. So there's certain experiences that are inherently human that affect the stories that we write and the types of beliefs we end up having and the types of gods we think exist. So it's not going to be those gods, but it could be a creator, right? We have no idea. Certainly things that are logically sound, like simulation theory, allow for there being a creator. So we're going to say don't know. We can be agnostic here. God is a logical possibility. In other words, there's nothing contradictory about the very idea of God. What does this even mean? Is a logical possibility. There's nothing contradictory about the very idea of God. Which idea? What's the idea of God? It depends which version of God we go with. It does state your reasoning might go beyond the scope of this experiment. Yeah, the problem is once we start choosing one of these things, then we might set ourselves up for some crazy, weird, logical contradiction when we don't want there to be. Like when we have enough nuance in our own belief that there wouldn't be a contradiction. So, what do we mean by this one? Let me ask. In the battleground God experiment, what does question 2, God is a logical possibility, in other words, there is nothing contradictory about the very idea of God, what does that mean? Okay, we can be doing medium for this. What would I even think this would, like, is it a coherent concept? Is that what this is asking? And I would say it's not a coherent concept, but that's not really what it's asking, because it's asking if it's logically possible. So I don't know what the underlying, like, what are we committing to with this concept of God that it hasn't explained at all? The concept of God is not self-contradictory in the way a square circle or a married bachelor is self-contradictory. It does not mean God exists. God probably exists. There is evidence for God. You believe in God. Okay. It only means the idea itself could be coherent. Oh man, I have to go true, right? Just based on the what I came up with last time, where it's like a God is in the creator. God can be logically possible and self-contradicting if we use para-consistent logic. Oh my gosh. All right, let's go true here, because we are entertaining. Actually, let's go by the authority on our left here. Okay, can I just take this to mean whether or not God as a creator is a coherent way of thinking about God? Like, could it just come down to whether or not I think that it's possible that something created the world that we exist in? Even if it's something crazy like the simulation theory? Okay. As long as you keep it at that level of logical coherence, not evidence or probability. Is the idea of God as the creator source of the world logically coherent, or does the... Okay. But something created the world is broader than God exists. Could involve creators who are not God in the traditional... Yeah, so the problem is we don't know what form of God we're talking about. So we might want to go false, just because I think that this thing is expecting or thinking about God in the more, you know, you give him all these attributes like he's omniscient and all, you know, all knowing, omnipresent, and all everywhere. It's logically possible if we say that definition can be done only apathetic, or we redefine the properties of God, not contradicting themselves. If we say about it, yeah, there's just so many ifs here. Can I even... Oh, there we go. So I'm going to say false. Oh, man. Okay, well then we've already lost. We gotta go back. We gotta do don't know, and we gotta go true. We have to play by the creator rule now. If God does not exist, then there is no basis for morality. False. Because we could still find morality just within... Honestly, God is completely separate from morality as far as I'm concerned. So let's do that. Any entity that it is right to call God must be free to do anything. False. Because it could be, in the simulation theory, the thing that created us could be itself similarly not free. And then obviously we get this like logical issue of a regression. But, you know, that just means that we don't know everything. You bit the bullet. That doesn't end the game. Oh, I see. It just marks mistakes. Well, we don't want to make any mistakes. Even if God exists, we can't find morality. That's also a good point, you know? All right, any entity that it is right to call God must want there to be as little suffering in the world as possible. False. God could be completely... might not even know that we exist, right? Any entity that it is right to call God must have the power to do anything. False. They might have just had the power to create us. While there might be argument over the details, evolution by natural selection is the correct explanation for the origin of species. correct explanation. I don't like that, but I think under normal circumstances we can say true. I wouldn't go with correct as if there's a right way where someone's out there tallying who's right and wrong, or that we're giving authority to one person or society. We could say it's an effective way. It seems to be an appropriate way within our culture. So let's submit. Oh no. Okay. Danger ahead. Like if God says do X because X is good, that doesn't mean I can create my own good since he gave me free will. Well, isn't free will just the capacity to do what is good or what is not good in that sense? Like he might say what's good and then he might give you the choice to do it or not do it. Even if I know I will be in hell, that doesn't mean that God's view on what is good and what is bad is true. Well, people, I think what people do is they just say that whatever God says is true, that he is the light and the truth. So, all right. It is justified to base one's belief about the external world, in other words, the world outside one's head. That's tricky. I mean, so we're going to go with the physical world, right? The physical world here. The external world, the world that we believe to be external is actually not the physical world. It's this embodied experience of I mean, if we're going to go down to like the neuroscientific view here, at least following the free energy principle, what we experience as the world, the external world, are hidden causes. It's like our own brain's model of what is out there. Now that model is affected by sensory stimuli that's hitting the brain, and that is constraining what we could possibly perceive to be out in the world, but it's not the same thing as the outside world or the physical world itself. All right, on a firm inner conviction. Okay, it is justified to base one's belief about the external world on a firm inner conviction, even in the absence of any independent evidence for the truth of this conviction. It is just. What does it mean by it is justified? Oh my God. I think so. I think we could say true here, right? If I understand that I spent 100 years learning about, I don't know, what would be a fun thing? Learning about some topic. And then I were to, in the moment, think that there is a certainty about this topic, but I don't have any evidence near me, then I think it would be justified based on the reasoning I could provide about what I believe. So I'm going to say true. Any entity that is right to call God, so any entity that is right to call the Creator, must know everything there is to know. False. Torturing innocent people is morally wrong. Oh my gosh. So this is an issue because now it's painting morality as there being objective rights. Within my perspective, this is definitely true, right? And I'm not going to say false because then it's going to make it sound like I'm saying within my own perspective this is false. So I'm going to say true here, just because that's the best I can do. I wouldn't want to say that this is a moral absolute in the world, but this is something that I would want absolutely all human beings to follow. That's the difference. All right, we got to go with it. If a thorough search for extraterrestrial intelligence lasting many decades brings no evidence of alien life. Decades is not enough. It is rational to believe that intelligent aliens do not exist. False. Many decades? What? Get out of here. People who die of horrible, painful diseases need to die in such a way for some higher purpose. False. If God exists, she can make it so that everything now considered sinful becomes morally acceptable and everything that is now considered morally good becomes sinful. False. Uh-oh. You're doing brilliantly. Still danger ahead, but so far so good. Only 5 more questions to go and not so much as a scratch so far. Well done. All right. It is foolish to believe in God without certain irrevocable proof that God exists. Oh man, this is tricky because now foolish is pretty ambiguous. What do we mean by foolish? I think it would be inappropriate to believe in God without certain irrevocable proof that God exists, but I also think that it's, in many cases, prudent to do so. So it's inappropriate in a empirical science point of view, and like the norms of how we ought to evidence things, and what we're allowed to say is true. But it's actually quite beneficial pragmatically for one's feeling of meaning in life, right? If you believe that there is a God and it's giving you these dictates, then you can feel as though you're doing something for a higher purpose, and that will help your own well-being. So this is tricky. This is tricky. I'm going to go with the science route, though, and I'm going to say that it is. That's what I'm going to go with. Yo, Daniel N., what's good? The mangosteen. We got to look up that one. Mangosteen. It's a plant. Oh, look at that. Is it a fruit? Or just a plant? The queen of fruits has a delicate sweet and tangy flavor, often described as a mix of peach, strawberry, lychee. Right, lychee. A mix of peach, strawberry, lychee, and pineapple with subtle creamy notes. How do I get this? Where do I find a mangosteen? Where can I find a mangosteen? I gotta do this actually off screen because it might just like dox me immediately. Yep, it does. By visiting large Asian supermarkets and international grocers. Never tried it, sadly. South Asia, I think. Okay. Yeah, hopefully I could find one around here. I gotta keep that in mind. All right, we're gonna go with this. We're gonna lock this in. We're going for the science condoned answer and not the well-being condoned answer. Oh, you stated earlier that it is justified to base one's belief about the external world on a firm inner conviction. Right, but oh man, this is rough. You didn't. It's not that you based the belief because of the inner conviction. It's not that what was the conviction about? It was that you studied for 100 years and then you believe, okay, this is something I know to be true because of that studying. So it's actually wrapped up in the reasoning that you could provide to justify that. But it's not like you said, I can believe in this because I feel like I can believe in this for this other reason. The question does generalize it, yeah. Even in the absence of any independent evidence for truth of this conviction. But now you say that it is foolish to believe in God without certain irrevocable proof that God exists. Yeah, so I didn't get the proof now, and I didn't get the proof previously. So I'm not going to be able to do that. Can never be certain. Okay. The lack of compelling arguments or evidence to show that God does not exist necessarily. Okay, wait, no, let me read this again. The lack of compelling arguments or evidence to show that God does not exist necessarily means that atheism is irrational, something akin to a faith. Yes, true. You say the lack of compelling arguments or evidence to show God does not exist necessarily makes it okay. For you, it seems the mere absence of evidence is not enough to justify non-belief. Yeah, so I got hit by this is the same bullet. It's going back to the conviction thing. So if we were to change that conviction thing, I think we're actually allowed perhaps all of the things after that. Is this thing actually made so that you always get a contradiction, though? The serial killer, Peter Sutcliffe, had a firm inner conviction that God wanted him to kill. Oh my gosh. He was therefore justified in believing that he was carrying out. He was justified in believing that he was carrying. Okay, so I'm going to say false here because other people get to judge someone else's moral. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I'm getting hit by the same one. We have to restart. I got to just rectify that one answer here. What do? We said don't know. True. False. What did we say here? Yeah. False. 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 True. This is it, right? This is the thing that got us. It is justified to base one's belief about the external world on a firm inner conviction, even in the absence of any independent evidence for the truth of this conviction. So, okay. I could have misread this, or I read it in a certain way. I imagine that we had the evidence previously, and we studied the evidence, and now we don't have it, and now we're going off of conviction. If we never had the evidence, then we are going to say false here. Any entity that it is right to call God must know everything. There is no false. And then we're going to go true on that one. If a thorough search, it is rational to believe that false. People who die, that false. She can make it so that everything now considered sinful becomes morally acceptable, and everything that is false. All right, and then we got, it is foolish to believe in God without certain irrevocable proof that, so then I'm going to say true here. Oh my gosh, did I just get a double? Oh, I see. Okay, we got a... No, you can pass with flying colors. Okay. Justified to him or to you? Is it always to you? I think it's that when it says justified, I think it means justified absolutely, which is already making, sirens go off in my head. But you claimed earlier that evolution by natural selection is the correct explanation for the origin of species. However, you have now stated that it is foolish to believe in God without a certain irrevocable proof that she exists. The problem is that there is no certain proof that evolutionary... oh my gosh. This thing. All right, I'll bite the bullet that a higher standard of proof is required for belief in God than for belief in evolution. I could do that. That's actually a really easy bullet to bite. Like, the type of argument about God is actually it's a metaphysical ontological argument, whereas the evolution's a theory, and so you can justify the theory with evidence, but it is, at the end of the day, it's a way of interpreting things that we see. So this is actually not a bad bullet to bite. The lack of compelling arguments or evidence to show that God does not exist necessarily means that... okay, what did I do last time that got me hit last time? Means that it's irrational, something akin to faith. True. It's not necessarily irrational. I should just do false regardless. I think this test was made in mind for a Christian or ex-Christian. They didn't think the questions and answers through too much. I was going to say, I don't think you believe you could prove proof in this domain. I think you believe as the consensus that proof belongs in math. I wouldn't say that proof belongs in math and logic. I would say proof belongs in I guess what would be what we would find appropriate for the context in some sense. So it really comes down to the social, the situation here, or the internalized, if I'm looking for proof in my own experience, in my own life, like what type of proof would that be? And it's going to come down to what I've internalized, even though I don't know what that is. You think we can prove things with certainty about the external world? It depends what we mean by certainty here. Demonstrable. Oh, is this a question about that? Oh man, I don't know if we're gonna get hit yet here. I'm going to go with false, but I think we get hit. Oh, the serial killer had a firm inner conviction that God wanted him to... Okay. False. If God exists, she can create square circles and make... No, false. Easy. It is justified to believe in God if one has a firm inner conviction that God exists, even if there is no independent... False. Okay. So we still get that one bullet? That's unfortunate. I was trying to go for perfect. But we could have just changed that. Maybe if we changed that previous one, we would have gotten got for something else. But not too thrilled about that one. But it was fun, so thank you for the suggestion. Demonstrable. Yeah, like in different scenarios, we accept different amounts of certainty or different amounts of risk and error. So, like, first of all, when we're dealing with something like this is a pen, we do have to recognize that, first of all, there's a lot cultural going on here. You know, if we gave this to someone 2,000 years ago, they wouldn't know that this is a pen. They wouldn't be able to identify it. Second of all, you see that this is a pen and you know it's a pen, but then you might find that it's cake, right? And you might find that it's actually a broken pen, or it's actually a pen without ink. So it's slightly different than what you thought. And you only find that out when you try to use it and then something happens. So, yeah, this is always a little unclear. Proof implies certainty. True. It's just semantics. All this time arguing about God when you could be learning about principal component analysis. Oh my gosh. Maybe you're onto something. I once argued with this girl that we use the same kind of faith we use for God as we use in marriage. Ooh. As you gotta have faith that you're marrying the right person. I mean, I would say it's analogous. I don't know if it's the exact same faith. One certainly provides you in one situation you're provided a lot more evidence or sensory evidence on the matter. Oh, was that not your take? Was that their take? You know, the person is there. You experience them through the years before marriage. You know what marriage is, and yeah, right. You know nothing about it. Yep. How is that any similar? I agree. I mean, it's only analogous in the sense that you have faith in, you know, your intuition. And, you know, your intuition in one scenario is affected by a lot of experiences and encounters and things that are empirical. And then in the other, you just have an intuition based off of perhaps what you learned when you were a kid, or what you hope is true, or what would make you feel good and what would make you feel like you have meaning in life. Yeah, but it's faith built through experience, not just right. So we can only like come away with this really thin analogy, but I do agree that that's a weak analogy. So I wouldn't like that argument either. All right, I think I'm gonna call it here. We got our good bit in. I have to see whether or not. Maybe I read this. Yo, Chaos, thank you for the follow. Anyways, cool stream. Thank you. I got to see if there's any more that I got to do with this video essay, because I was hoping to film it tomorrow. So it's either I film it tomorrow or I film it on Sunday. But I could probably just film it tomorrow, maybe not first thing in the morning. We'll see. But regardless, I'm going to call it there. Have a good rest of the day, everyone, and see you later.